After the first tournament in November 1993, the UFC gained wide popularity, almost immediately due to its novelty and entertainment. But the brutality of the competition and how the organizers promoted it, in particular by advertising the tournaments as fights without rules, quickly attracted the attention of critics. Senator John McCain and the local authorities did their best to shut it all down. And after the disastrous UFC 9, where for the first time the tournament format was not used and the audience was bored watching the card fights, the organizers needed to gain momentum. Therefore, by popular demand, the organizers decided to return to the usual tournament format and also debut with a new promotion star and future MMA legend. On July 12, 1996, the UFC 10 tournament took place, where, according to the traditional Olympic system, 8 fighters fought for victory. At the time, fans were mostly into the tournament style, as it was thought to add an element of stamina to the fighters. The event was broadcast live on pay-per-view in the United States and was later released on VHS. Then, the legendary Bruce Buffer, who is still an indispensable UFC ring announcer, announced the fights in the octagon for the first time. But there is another fact that has become important to the history of the development of mixed martial arts. This is the debut at this tournament of the talented American wrestler Mark Coleman, who is considered the founder and pioneer of the ground and pound strategy. This style of ground control has become, is, and will be used by all successful mixed martial arts fighters. Mark Coleman started wrestling as a teenager. He said that from an early age, he knew that he wanted to become the best athlete in the world. At the age of 19, Mark was already a double state wrestling champion. As a university student, he became a 2-time Mid-America Wrestling Conference champion and won the NCAA championship. After graduating from university, Coleman set his sights on representing the United States on the world stage. He worked as an assistant coach, helping close friend Kevin Randleman win the NCAA title. During his coaching years, Coleman used university gyms to stay in shape for competition, a move that paid off with a gold medal at the 1991 Pan American Games. Not only did the conditions help Mark prepare for international competition, but he sparred daily with heavyweights such as Randleman, Ray Mendoza, and Nick Nutter. At the World Championships in Bulgaria in 1991, he finished second and was awarded a place on the U.S. wrestling team. He took part in the Olympic Games twice. In 1992, in Barcelona, he finished 7th overall, and in 1996, in Atlanta, he lost in the semifinals. Mark was lucky that a new sport, mixed martial arts, began to take shape around the time his wrestling career came to an end. Wanting to become the best in the world, Mark turned his attention to the mixed martial arts cage. In the first fight of the quarterfinals of the UFC 10 tournament fought undefeated fighter Don Frye and kickboxer Mark Hall. Don Frye was the UFC 8 tournament champion and defeated Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu master Amori Battetti at UFC 9. Therefore, he was the main fan star and a favorite for the upcoming tournament. Even in his amateur wrestling career, Frye's trainer was Dan Severn, who later became the UFC 5 champion. In the quarterfinals of the UFC 8 tournament, he won the record for the fastest knockout at the time, sending 410-pound Thomas Ramirez to sleep in just 8 seconds. Don Frye's contender, Mark Hall, went 3-1 and was famous for his 42-second stoppage of 390-pound world sumo champion Koji Katao at the previous UFC. When the fight started, Hall landed a good spinning kick to the ribs of Frye, but immediately Don had a beautiful slam and took control of the parterre. Frye started hitting the ribs, and after about a minute, bruises were visible there. The entire battle took place on the ground. Hall occasionally tried to strike from below, and Frye concentrated his attack on the opponent's body. And these were heavy blows to the ribs, accompanied by a loud sound. Around the 8th minute, Fry got up and landed several shots to Hall's head. In the 11th minute, the referee Big John McCarthy stopped the fight due to Mark Hall's too passive defense. He was indeed exhausted when he got to his feet. A magnificent display of Fry's sportsmanship and Hall's resilience. Don Fry made it to the semifinals of the tournament, and Mark Hall went into the octagon twice more against Don in the future, but lost both times and ended his career with a negative record of 5-6. In the second fight of the quarterfinals, Brian Johnston and Scott Fiedler made their debuts against one another in the octagon. Both guys were listed as kickboxers with some wrestling skills, and both are pretty big, with the same height at 6'4" and weighing over 220 pounds. The fight quickly and unexpectedly turned into a wrestling match. Immediately after the bell, Johnston threw a hip shot and missed with a hard soccer kick. Then immediately another throw and an unsuccessful attempt to get out of the twisting of the heel from Brian. Johnston gave back, and Scott Fiedler from the back mount tried to choke. But Johnston escaped, and the fighters switched places. Now he sat on the opponent's back and struck from behind. In the 3rd minute, the referee stopped this beating in favor of Brian Johnston. He advanced to the semifinals against Don Fry, and Scott Fiedler didn't fight as a pro anymore. Debutants Mark Coleman and former Israeli karate champion Moti Horenstein entered the 3rd fight of the quarterfinals. The organizers advertised both fighters as newcomers, but Coleman was the most decorated world-class fighter to ever compete in the UFC octagon. The commentator noted that Horenstein is similar to Jean-Claude Van Damme, but more rigid. The Israeli fighter started with a front kick, while Coleman went to the legs and took the fight to the ground. Mark immediately got into a full mount position and turned on his hard grounded pound. Horenstein defended himself as best he could and tried to block Mark's blows. From side control, Coleman hit a knee to the head, and then he delivered several heavy blows to the head. Horenstein covered his face with his hands, and Big McCarthy stopped the fight. Coleman scores an impressive win on his debut and advances to the semifinals. Moti Horenstein had a total of 7 fights and won only 1. In the last fight of the quarterfinals, the already experienced Trinidadian kickboxer with a 2-2 record, Gary Goodridge, nicknamed Big Daddy, fought against John Campatella in his debut. After the gong, Campatella ran to his opponent and ran into a series of tight hooks from Goodridge. John made a throw through himself, but the fighters quickly got up. The athletes grappled in the clinch, where Campatella dominated and delivered a powerful blow to the back of the head. Goodridge unexpectedly pulled his opponent down, but managed to roll and saddle Campatella. 4 heavy left-hand strikes are taken by the head of John Campatella, and Big John McCarthy stops the fight. Big Daddy goes to the semifinals, where he will fight Mark Coleman. For Campatella, this was the first and last fight in his professional career. Don Fry and Brian Johnston faced each other in the first bout of the semifinals. Both fighters took almost no damage in the quarterfinals and came into the fight in good spirits. Only Fry's right eye was a bit swollen. The confident gait of Don Fry, with which he walked towards the enemy after the gong, impressed everyone. He immediately made a pass, but Johnston countered him well with a knee and punches. In the long clinch, both fighters landed a lot of punches. There was a good series of punches to the ribs from Fry, and then the initiative passed to Johnston, and he discharged a good series of punches. Fry had a takedown and had some control on the ground from behind. Lots of body shots from Don. Johnston rolls over, and Fry takes a side control position. He delivers a powerful elbow strike that leaves a cut over Johnston's right eye. Brian knocks in surrender at the 5th minute of the fight. Don Fry made it to the final, where Brian Johnston had 8 more fights and ended his career a year later with a 5-5 record. The other 2 quarterfinal winners, Mark Coleman and Gary Big Daddy Goodridge, met in the second bout of the semifinals. After the gong, Goodridge took the center of the octagon and began to press. Coleman held a takedown and sat in the guard to the opponent. Goodridge tied his hands and did not allow Coleman's ground and pound to develop successfully. Mark headbutted Goodridge's face to free his hand for punches. Gary managed to get up, but Coleman controlled him from behind and landed some solid uppercuts and hooks to the head. Goodridge broke free and started chasing Coleman with hooks, but missed. Mark made a takedown and landed several significant punches from side control. Big Daddy gave his back and immediately gave up as Coleman tucked his legs in for a chokehold. Mark Coleman in the final, and Gary Goodridge had a long professional career, not only in MMA, but also in kickboxing, on account of his victory over UFC champions Don Fry and Oleg Taktarov. It was time for the finals, and talented fighters Don Fry and Mark Coleman entered the ring. Both guys are good fighters, but Coleman is 31 pounds heavier than Fry. However, a lighter fighter is likely to have more staying power in the standing position. After the bell, Coleman immediately tried a takedown, but Fry skillfully defended himself from the pass. However, almost immediately he gave his back. Don swiped to his back and immediately took several heavy overhand blows from Coleman to his head. Fry tried to defend, but Mark developed his ground and pound. There were a lot of opportunities for submissions, but Fry's downside is that he didn't see or use them. Instead, Don missed more and more meaningful hits. Fry eventually got to his feet thanks to Coleman's careless grab on the head. Both fighters looked exhausted. Coleman ate the hit, but brought Fry back to the canvas of the octagon. He turned his ground and pound back on, but the referee stops the fight to look at Don Fry's condition. The audience hums with displeasure, and Mark also resents this incomprehensible respite for Fry. After the break, the fighters fought in the standing position for some time, but Coleman took his back, broke the defense, and tried to go to the chokehold. Fry reversed, but did not hold the position. Coleman lifted him up and landed a powerful right hook to the head as he lowered him. Immediately, another series of blows to the head were eaten by Fry. Mark immediately landed a takedown and turned on his ground and pound to the max. After several headbutts from Coleman to Fry's face, Big John McCarthy stopped the fight at 12 minutes. Mark Coleman completes his impressive debut by inflicting Fry's first loss and becoming the UFC 10 tournament champion. Don Fry would go on a 9-fight win streak to win UFC Ultimate 96. Coming on the heels of UFC 9, which didn't have any real good fights and was dragged out by a couple of bad ones, this tournament was a breath of fresh air. There was a lot of action in almost every fight. It was one of the best tournaments, as there were no substitutes called in, and there were no bad fights at all. Historically, it was then that the ground and pound style was born. Coleman has been dubbed the Godfather of ground and pound for his takedown technique, followed by furious punches, elbows, and headbutts. This type of combat strategy earned him the nickname Hammer. Coleman knocked down everyone in front of him and continued to drive them into submission. It was the most impressive UFC debut to date, including Don Fry's debut at UFC 8. Coleman showed what a truly aggressive fighter can do. If you enjoyed this video clip, please press the like, leave your comments, and tap the bell icon to avoid missing the next video. And if you watch this video clip without a subscription, sign up for the channel right now. We'll see you in the next video.